hearing on confirmation, Senate confirmation of David Fall, Kermit Brown, Laura Schmidt Pizzato, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Jim Mathis, the position of University of Wyoming Board of Trustees. We're going to really have a discussion with everybody at once. Is the plan. Going to introduce the committee. The governor's office is going to introduce the nominees, and then we'll ask each of the nominees to say a few words, and then we'll have just general discussion. I think we've got some questions we want to ask and some thoughts we want to share about the university. The committee, we've got Senator Bo Beitman, Senator Sherry Steinmetz. I'm Charles Scott, I'm the chairman. Senator Evie Brennan and Senator Chris Roffus. With that, governor's office, can you introduce the nominees? And
good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Lachelle Brandt, Governor Gordon's Education Policy Advisor. On behalf of the governor, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the nominees to the University Board of Trustees for your consideration. I will begin with Dr. Fall. Dr. Fall is a Wyoming native and grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming.
okay, which one of you is Dr. Fall?
Top left corner, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
He graduated from the University of Wyoming with a BA in zoology. After receiving his BA in zoology, he attended and graduated from Creighton University School of Medicine and completed a residency at the Children's Mercy in Kansas City. In 1984, he settled in Gillette, Wyoming with his wife, who is also a Wyoming native from Basin, Wyoming, and the two of them have practiced pediatrics for the past 30 years. Dr. Fall has served on multiple boards throughout his career. He served on his local school board for 16 years, and for 10 of those years, he served as the board chairman. Dr. Fall served as president of the Wyoming School Boards Association for 2 years. In 2017, Dr. Fall was appointed to the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees by Governor Meade. He has served on the board for the past 6 years, and the governor is recommending him to be reappointed for a second term. Moving on to Kermit Brown. Kermit is a Wyoming native raised in Casper, Wyoming. He graduated from the university with a degree in animal husbandry and a degree in business administration. He spent 4 years in the U.S. Navy, attaining the rank of lieutenant before returning to the University of Wyoming. Kermit graduated from the University College of Law and practiced law in Wheatland and Rawlins before moving his practice to Laramie in 1996. He is currently the senior partner in Brown and Heiser. Kermit has served as president of the Wyoming State Bar. He is one of the founders of Western States Bank and was a director of the bank and holding company until the sale of the bank in 2022. Kermit served 6 terms in the Wyoming House of Representatives. He served as Majority Floor Leader in 2013 to 2014 and as Speaker of the House in the 2015-2016 session. In 2017, Kermit was appointed to the University Board of Trustees by Governor Meade and served as Vice Chairman of the board in 2021. Governor Gordon is recommending Kermit for reappointment for a second term. Next is Laura Schmidt Pizzato. Laura attended the University of Wyoming and graduated with a BA in Spanish. She then pursued and graduated from the University of Utah with a master's degree in social work. She is currently a licensed clinical social worker in Rock Springs and has served on numerous boards throughout her community. She served on the Wyoming State Mental Health Professional Licensing Board and served as chairperson for 10 years. She's a former Sweetwater School District #1 Foundation board member and served on the board for 12 years, and for 6 of those years, she served as president. She's past president of the Congressional Awards Council and is currently serving on the board. Laura is a member of the University of Wyoming Alumni Association and the Cowboy Joe Club. This will be Laura's first full term on the University Board of Trustees. She was appointed in 2018 by Governor Meade to fill a vacancy for the remainder of an unexpired term. She is currently serving as the University of Wyoming Board Secretary. And lastly is Jim Mathis. Jim Mathis is an executive who began as a student at WyoTech in 1976 and became employed there 5 months later. That started Jim's impressive 26-year career. At WyoTech, Jim held positions of instructor, curriculum developer, director of training, chief operating officer, vice president of admissions and marketing, and the last 5 years as president and CEO. After resigning from WyoTech and helping to successfully sell WyoTech, Jim was sought out to help rebuild and restructure other educational institutions throughout the country. He spent years holding many executive positions that led to the success of many institutions nationwide that remain successful today. Jim returned to his ranch in 2014, where he managed the day-to-day operations of the Getaway Ranch and the Kite Ranch. In 2018, the Wyoming legislature contacted Jim to testify regarding WyoTech. The school was closing and the legislature was interested in options to keep it open. A bill was passed to allow private entities to borrow funds from the state. Jim and his brother-in-law successfully borrowed money to purchase WyoTech and cover the operating losses until profitable. They started in 2018 with only 12 students and 12 employees. Today, they have 850 students and close to 200 employees. Jim currently serves as CEO of WyoTech and runs the day-to-day operations. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
I will comment that it's an impressive set of resumes and accomplishments that these nominees have. I will comment the nominees that, yes, this is a confirmation hearing. It's going to be in some ways a little like a job interview, but the standards are a little different because the governor has decided y'all are the best for the position. And our job is to make sure that you're adequate for the position. And that's a little different standard. And I think mostly what we're going to want to do is talk about the university and its future and what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, and things like that. So I'm looking forward. That's why we're doing it as a mass thing. I think we're going to have hopefully we're going to have a good group discussion of where the university is going and what needs to be done there. What I want to do is offer each of the nominees a chance to say a few words about what they see they're getting into and what needs to be done. And then we'll go to questions and comments and just an open discussion. So we're going to do it in the order that you were introduced. So Dr. Fall, you're first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the rest of the committee.
We may have to ask you to unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you yet.
Can't hear me. I'm not muted.
We can hear you on the line.
They can hear me on the line, just not at your.
Can we see if we can get it to work?
Yeah, it's scripting him, so he's working. We're not working.
Something is wrong with our Zoom connection.
How you guys doing?
No, he's being scripted, so it's our room audio.
Talk among ourselves.
Yes.
David, we can't hear you because of room audio problems. You're fine, but we're trying to figure it out here.
Okay, thank you.
So do we need to get the technical experts up here? Okay. That's the trouble with these remote things. They almost always have some kind of a technical difficulty.
Mr. Chairman, did you want to give them the oath too as well?
I
Did
can't
you
hear you.
want, did you want to give them the oath as well?
No,
Okay.
yeah, I will mention that while we're waiting on the technical things. We get any other witnesses that want to testify, they're not state agency or legislator, we will put them under oath. It's a precaution against somebody coming in and unreasonably falsely trashing a nominee. And I've never seen the need for it, but we are asked to do that, and that's why. We're nominees, we apologize. We simply cannot hear you at all. There's something wrong with the audio portion of things here. This is a first for us. We've always been able to get it to work before, and I don't know what the problem is.
It's probably one keystroke somewhere.
Probably, yeah, probably in a wire loose.
According to all the equipment, it should be working. So Joe is on his way.
You guys
Well,
weathered the last
yeah.
storm okay? Oh, that last storm was a good one.
We can all hear each other, the transcription's working, we don't have any room audio.
I'm in Arizona, and we had to, in Wickenburg, and I had to speak Friday in San Diego. So we drove Thursday and never expected a snow or blizzard on I-8 going into San Diego. There are 11 inches of snow and vehicles all over the road. It is the most crazy thing. And I took my rear wheel drive car, and I had a 4-wheel drive pickup I could have taken, but I never expected, what we ran into, but we made it back okay.
Okay. Are we starting to get some audio?
Well, we
Okay,
went to
Dr.
winter.
Fall,
Oh,
apologize. Let's go ahead and get started.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the Education Committee. It's a pleasure I get to speak with you. I know last time we did this, we didn't do this, so I actually kind of look forward to this. As Lachelle said, I've been on the board for 6 years, and it's been a great experience. I previously served on our local school board, and so I thought I knew education, and then you get to university and you realize you really don't know higher education. And so I've learned a lot. I think that my time on the board, we weathered a couple of pretty significant budget cuts. We, of course, went through a change in the president, which I never want to do again. And so I think we've come out in a pretty good spot. I think going forward, I think the things that I would like to see us accomplish are a couple things. One is about 3 years ago, we formed a research and economic development committee, which I am the chairman of. And so I think that I'd like to see us become an R1 Carnegie institution in research, which I think would really help. It helps a lot with recruitment, with staff, with students, with getting these bigger and better grants. And I think that kind of goes along with the next thing I'd like to see us do is somehow we need to wean ourselves a little more from the state. And I think the only way we can do that is through more research money and also increasing our student load. And I think that that is one of our goals, is to have more students on board. I think we truly have the capacity for more students at the university. I'm not sure exactly what the top number is, but certainly 14,000 number I think is not unrealistic. On the other hand, I don't want to get too many students, because then I think we kind of lose what the University of Wyoming is all about, which is kind of a low good student teacher ratio and kind of a small town feel. And so I think that those are the things that I'd like to see us do, hopefully in the next 6 years, in kind of the big picture. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Kermit Brown.
Good morning, Senator Scott and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be with you again. I wish I could be there in person. There's some old friends there. I have been extremely gratified with the opportunity to serve on the Board of Trustees of the university. I owe this university so much for my success in the Navy, my success in the practice of law, my success in banking, and my success in politics. And I'm willing to devote a great deal of time to try to pay that back and to make the university a better place. It's a complex organization with lots of moving parts, and a lot of them are moving, and we don't know that they're moving until they already moved. So we have, to some extent, we followed around to see where it went. We try to provide guidance in areas where we can and where we can be proactive, but that's a tricky proposition for a board member because we don't really run the university and have no intention of micromanaging it. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is that follows roughly along with what Dr. Fall said. I think we need to grow the university and not on the back of the legislature. We may have about all the university the legislature can afford. I think we're blessed with a lot of facilities, and I think we have some excess capacity right now. And I'd like to see the university grow, but we need to do it in such a way that it doesn't further burden the legislature and make us ever more dependent on the mineral economy of the state if there were a way. One of the factors there that complicates that is the constraint in the Constitution that education at this university be as nearly free as possible. So we can't just take off and start jacking up tuition rates in order to generate revenue. So in my mind, it's the same thing. We need to find a way to become more financially independent, not burden the legislature so much, and finance growth from another source. And I think that source is research, and we need to become a research university. I think we did a fine job of hiring a president who understands that component of the university and gives us the ability to become a more of a research university, which generates dollars that don't come out of the legislature's pocket and gives us the ability to grow the university further. So I think I'll stop there. It's a real privilege to be a board member. I am the vice chairman, and I guess if everything shook out, I would be the next chairman of the board. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next, Ms. Schmidt-Pizzato. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Thank you, Chairman Scott and members of the committee. Yes, you are. So I don't know what I can add because my two fellow colleagues just took all the thunder for, research is going to be really important in the future of this university. Enrollment is also another thing that's very important. So one of the things that's happened in higher education over the last few years with COVID is many institutions have lost 20-25% of enrollment, and UW also lost enrollment. But we are really looking at a very exciting place that we've been down 5% or 10%, where many of our competitors are down 20%. So that's a very exciting thing for UW to be still in the mix of providing a lot of education for a lot of students. However, that needs to grow. We need to grow our enrollment. We need to become, much more of a research-based university. The other thing that I'll just say personally is I have a recent graduate of UW, and I have two current students there, one on campus, one off campus. And so there's a piece that I get to see the everyday workings of what's going on at that university that from a little bit of a different perspective. And it's been a lot of fun to see it on both sides for me during these past few years. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mathis?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman Scott and Education Committee. I'm very humbled to even be considered and thought of to be on the trustee board, but I'm looking forward to it. I don't have a lot of perspective other than I'm going to have to change calling the UW the other school in town. But so I quit that practice once the governor called me. No, just kidding. But I do have leadership abilities that God has blessed me with, I think, because I don't think I'm that smart, but I've been able to grow and change some fairly significant large organizations with a lot of campuses and a lot of moving parts to success when they're failing. And my background is leadership and sales and marketing and the business side. So I'm looking forward to learning and being part of the trustee members and seeing what we can get accomplished. So I'm here to serve and help.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee, questions, comments, suggestions? If not, I'll lead off. I'm hearing two themes. One, that we need to grow the university, and second, that one of the ways to do it is concentration on research. Let me comment, I think really the primary mission of the university is undergraduate education. And I've seen research-based universities where they manage to be strongly research, but keep a focus on undergraduate education and put that first. And I've seen other research universities where the undergraduates take the short end of the stick and get whatever graduate student needs employment as an instructor. How do you strike that balance? And Kermit, maybe we'll lead off with you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very sensitive to the issue that you raise. And I think in the bottom line is we want to graduate critical thinkers at all levels. And undergraduate education is very important because this is a land-grant university. This is our university for our state, and it's for our kids. Yeah, in the end, first and foremost, it's for our kids. So we have to graduate kids that are prepared to go out in the world. And I might add, and I know you've heard me go off on this before, but I might add, if a family has 3 kids in Wyoming, it's been the lament since we were kids, and I don't see it changing. If a family has 3 kids, 2 of them are probably going to leave the state. 1 may stay. And so our university has to be relevant, not just to the state of Wyoming, but our kids that leave have to be competitive where they go. And so I at least absolutely considered an obligation to not to compromise undergraduate education, to graduate kids from this university that are prepared as best they can be, whether they stay in the state of Wyoming or whether they go somewhere else. And we have graduates all over the United States, and they're all competitive, and we have to remain that way. And so we have to be mindful of education. The research really is about driving cutting edge stuff. It's about another source of revenue, and it's about a way to broaden the university. But I feel the same tension that you do, and I would never abandon the undergraduate education mission in the university, because as a land grant institution, that's a first and foremost obligation that we have to fulfill.
Okay. Anybody else? Dr. Fall.
Yes, if you look, we already have the Research Scholars Program at the University of Wyoming, which is a program for undergraduates to get involved in research. And I think that's been a very popular program, and we would like to grow that actually. And I think you can do it both ways. I think you can bring the undergraduates along in the research, but still increase your research capacity. But I agree with Kermit. I mean, I think we are foremost undergraduate education is our forte, but I think we can do both.
Let me comment to y'all that where I went to school, it was very much a research, very good research-based school, but the administration, I don't know how they did it, whether the extent they forced it and whatnot, but they got the best professors teaching the undergraduate courses as well as doing their research. And that was one of the earmark, I thought of a successful undergraduate effort, because you got access to the best that the school had to offer. Are there any techniques that that Wyoming needs to do to ensure that sort of policy continues at university? Mrs. Pizzato, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think that one of the challenges that we've had, I mean, I might go off on a little bit of a tangent from that, but I think one of the challenges that we've had recently is that we have not been competitive salary-wise for professors. So we are really attempting to get the best faculty there, but we have not been able to be very competitive in that. I think the efforts of the legislature this year are going to really help with some of the changes in being able to provide some additional funds for faculty. But that affects everything. It affects, who's going to be teaching those classes, whether they're graduate or undergraduate. It affects who we can attract for research. It just affects the entire university. The other thing that I'll say on research is that part of it is that UW is well positioned to do some specialized research, and we are doing it already, but we can expand, and there's funding out there, and then we need to be able to go after that. I think our new president is, well, not so new now, but somewhat new president. I think he's well positioned to compete at the national level for some of those funds. If we look at, and I know that our goals and your goals are really well aligned. So we look at carbon capture and research on that front. Everybody in the state, we're all at the same, we have similar goals for how to do that. And UW needs to be a central piece in assisting the state in solving those real world problems, but then also getting some funding, bringing it into the university, it gets it into the state, and so on. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to be able to start hiring more faculty, and not to say that we have top-notch faculty already there. We just have a lot of unfilled positions that also need to attract some really good faculty as well.
Mr. Mathis?
Yes,
You-
I'd just like to add a comment that as we think about growth and changes everything else, that we have to, in my opinion, and again, I'm new to the board here, but we have to make sure we support the core curriculums, and because so many times the turnaround companies I did, the previous management teams that I'd go in and fire, and because they were taking these companies bankrupt, would always come up with new programs, and they'd always find marketing dollars and dollars to support it, hire people, buildings, classrooms, everything else, but they're going broke. And so they would keep limiting the dollars to the core curriculums. And so whatever we do is, we got to decide what those core curriculums are and make sure that we continue to support them, and to make sure that we keep marketing them the way we should, and not just spend more money on, more curriculum and more programs and not support are the ones that are the core to the University of Wyoming. So it's kind of like me when I'm ranching. If I need to buy a new tractor or more cows, I can always find the money. But if my wife needs a new bedroom set, there's no money available. So that's a syndrome.
Understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that leads me into my question, where we know that the University of Wyoming is a land grant university, which is designed to focus on engineering and agriculture and teach the liberal arts. So my question would be to all of you, in your view, what is the difference between liberal arts and liberalism? And how should that affect the University of Wyoming?
Okay, who wants to lead off with that? Kermit, we'll call on you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that opportunity. And good morning, Senator Steinmetz. It's nice to see you again. Liberal arts, well, let's back up a little bit. If we look at the surrounding states, and almost every surrounding state that we know of has two universities. There's Montana, Montana State, Colorado or CU, and CSU, New Mexico and New Mexico State. It goes on and on and on. One of those schools is typically the land-grant university, and the other one is what's called the flagship university. And the land-grant university fills the traditional role of, in fact, CSU, you know, it used to be called Colorado A&M, Colorado Agriculture and Machinery. And that is sort of a distillation of the land-grant mission. The other school then is the liberal arts school. And so when we got to Wyoming, and I think you've heard me say this before, but I once read a lot of the debates that they had when we became a state, and they were worried about whether we could even afford to be a state. And remember this, the center core of our capital was built by the feds and financed by the feds when we were a territory, and they weren't sure that we had enough money to be a state. So there were all kinds of economies, the Board of Charities reform, we have an appointed attorney general instead of an elected attorney general. There's a whole bunch of things there. And one of them was that we would have one university. And within the Morrill Act, there is the ability to have both, as a land-grant university, still the ability to teach the liberal arts. And so we combined it all in one university, as you've pointed out. So what's the difference between liberal arts and liberalism? Liberal arts are I don't have a real good definition, but I can tell you this: at all those other schools, the law school is in the liberal arts university. It's considered to be one of the liberal arts. So the law school is at CU, it's at New Mexico, it's at Montana. The land grant schools don't have that because it's a liberal art. And at Wyoming, we are unique in that we're a land grant and a flagship university, and we have a law school in this university. So the liberal arts include the humanities, philosophy, all that sort of stuff. I'm not an authority on that, but that doesn't necessarily equate to liberalism. Liberalism is a political invention that describes a certain persuasion in life, and so I think it's quite compatible for a conservative to major in the liberal arts. So I think we have conservative lawyers who went to law school, which is a liberal art component, that are still conservative people. And so it's really important to me that the liberal arts, which we teach, and which we should teach, aren't used to define us as a politically liberal leaning institution. And I think that's an important distinction that we, all of us, intend to preserve. And along that line, Senator Steinmetz, there are courses that politically leaning liberals consider to be liberalism in our university. There's no doubt about it. Some of the gender-based stuff, which I know you have great concern about, and other things within the university. Those are not required courses. But if we're going to be a university, and if we're going to be the kind of university that can educate those two kids that are leaving, that are going somewhere else, they need to understand that stuff. They're not to be indoctrinated. It's not an indoctrination program. It's not even intended to try to persuade them, but there's curiosity, and there's intellectual curiosity, and those kids are going to go all over the world, and they're going to encounter these ideas. And it's sort of like the environmental stuff that we have in the law school, and you'll hear lawyers say, you know, if you go to court and you're a conservative lawyer and you've never heard these environmental arguments, the first time you go to court, you're going to get shredded. And you have to have been exposed to those and understand their thinking and understand those ideas if you're going to combat them. And so if you're going to be a conservative lawyer, you have to understand what the liberals say. And sometimes in law school, we say, you know, if you're properly prepared, we ought to draw straws at the courtroom door. And you don't know which side of the case you're going to take as a lawyer when you walk in the courtroom door until you draw a straw. You ought to know one side just as well as the other. But to do that, we have to teach it in school. However, I don't think that those courses, and particularly the ones that you're concerned about, I know which ones they are, we don't need to be out there with a megaphone talking about those and promoting those as the lead coursework at what's going on in the university. And there's been some of that goes on, and I don't approve of it. And I said in the Saddle Up program, when I talked to him after that first one, I said, you know, a better philosophy probably would be that we should be telling new students, don't do anything down here that you'd be ashamed to go home and tell your mother about. I think that's what's really important. And so we do have liberal arts. They're different than political liberalism. We have courses in the university that political liberals like and political conservatives object to, but they serve a purpose and they don't define the mission of the university. They're simply part of it. I don't want to use a megaphone with those. None of those courses are required. They never have been, they never will be, but they have to be available if we're going to educate those two kids that are leaving and going wherever they're going to go. Thank you.
Let me, before I go to the rest of you, ask a follow-up question with that. It seems to me that a good university is going to expose its students to all kinds of points of view and try to make, if you will, every student a little uncomfortable with the beliefs they come in, make them challenge themselves and think about what they believe and why. How do you go about getting that? How do you go about getting all the points of view represented, particularly in the non-technical courses where there is a political component to it? How do you get students exposed to all the points of view? Who wants to be next on this subject? Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Schmidt-Pizzato.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. You know, as a mom of three, well, one graduate and then these two that are there, I will tell you, they're exposed every day to positions that are all over the map. And they're exposed from their fellow students, but most importantly from faculty. So it's not just one side at all. And my kids will call and they'll say, did you know such and such? And, you know, some of the times I do know something about it. Some of the times I don't know anything about it at all. And I research it, I look it up and want to have a discussion, but it's not only left leaning or only right leaning or any of that. It's just that's what I think a university environment is all about, is exposing people to new ideas, new thoughts, and getting the students to be able to use their own abilities to critically think and come up with what do they believe and how can they support it and how can they move forward. So it's alive and well at the university. There's so much diversity of thought there that really promotes, you know, this critical thinking component that's super important for all of us to be able to go forward in the future.
Okay, anybody else? Dr. Fall.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think expanding upon what the last two have said a little bit, I mean, we talk about, I mean, if you go to a university, a comprehensive university like ours, I mean, you have to be exposed to everything, because if not there, where? And so I think that you have to have all points of view. And I know some of our classes are not going over well in Wyoming, but I think these kids have to have the opportunity, like Kermit said, and you've heard us talk about critical thinking. I think that that's the key to any comprehensive university, is to teach kids critical thinking. Now that means different things for different students, but we're not I mean, we want our kids to come out of college and graduate and get a job, but we're not preparing them for that job. We're preparing them for the 5th or 6th job down the road, because kids don't stay in the same career. They don't stay in the same job. So they have to have the ability to adapt and to move on if they're going to get their 5th or 6th job. And critical thinking to me is that we teach them how to speak. Not just, they don't have to be great public speakers, but they have to be able to win an argument with their fellow engineers in a boardroom somewhere. They have to be able to read and write, not just send off some worthless tweet, but to really read an article and critically read the article to see what it is all about. And then finally, they have to become lifelong learners. They have to learn how to learn. And because, I mean, even, in medicine, it's changed so much since I've been out. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you have to just keep learning all the time. And that's what critical thinking is. And I think that's what we provide at the university. And so we have to have all points of view. We have to have all different courses that kids might be interested in. They might not. I mean, we all went to university somewhere, and we took classes that were like we'll have never use again, but they were fun. And so I think we have to have those things. Thank you.
Okay. Committee. Let me raise another set of issues. Several of you talked about needing to expand the student body. Seems to me that we've got some major advantages with the University of Wyoming. We've been doing quite well, I think, in the various national rankings. The one I happen to follow is the Wall Street Journal one, because I like the way they do it, looking at how the graduates perform 10 years out, looking at how much attention they get from the faculty while they're at the university. And on those rankings, we rate better than anything in, looking at our neighboring states, anything in Nebraska, South Dakota, Montana, or Idaho. University of Wyoming is better than, does better in those rankings than any institution in those states. We do beat out Colorado State, which is a source of some pride, I would think. So that's an advantage. The tuition was as nearly free as possible. It's been creeping up, and I don't know where we rank anymore on that. We've had a steady set of increases, and one of the questions is, are we getting too much? And the other thing, I think, as we go out and try to attract the best and the brightest, are we really maintaining the kind of balance that a great university ought to have in terms of its diversity of opinion, in terms of not allowing the politically correct to suppress other points of view? Would like y'all's thinking on that. Kermit.
Well, Mr. Chairman, all the time I was in the legislature, I struggled with this problem, and the issue for the university is it has to attain a critical mass, and that critical mass has to be, if it's too small, we just can't do some of the things that we ought to be doing. Once we attain the critical mass, then there's really a question that I used to ask in the legislature, because I don't think anybody in these universities paying the full cost of their education. It's being subsidized by the state. And so as a legislator, I sat there and say, well, every time you add another student, you just add another debit that we've got to cover in state government. That's what we'd like to address. But are we large enough, or do we need to become larger? The issue that bothers me is that I hear from the administration in many parts of the university that we're running very thin. We're really down to one faculty member critical to accreditation. And if we lose that faculty member, we're unable to be reaccredited in that particular area. And I don't like to run that thin. And so I would like to see the university grow sufficiently that we could have some redundancy and we could have some better coverage in areas where we're just where we're just down to one person. To do that, we have to have more students. I mean, look at CS. At one time, Wyoming and CSU were nearly comparable in numbers of students. Now CSU's at 44,000 and we're stuck at 11,000. And I just don't think we can do that. And I don't want growth just for growth's sake, but I do think that with a little larger group, we get a better critical mass. We get the ability to hire a few more really good quality people that can cover for each other and have some redundancy so that we're not so susceptible to failure or to problems if we lose one single faculty member somewhere. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Schmidt, Pasano. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. So 2 points. One of them is because we are a land grant university and we are the sole university, we are trying to do everything. So we have so many different degree programs. We are very thin, like what Kermit is saying. A little bit more students would benefit us in assisting with that. The second point is that on your question about where we're at with tuition, we are still at the lower level for tuition, nationally and regionally. Many of the students who are going to be coming from the south or from the north of us will be able to come as out-of-state students for about the same amount of cost or less than what they would be paying for their institutions in their own states. So we are still very, very low in tuition, even though we've continued to raise, what I consider a modest 4% a year, sometimes 2%, 4%, but it's pretty modest compared to what our competitors are raising their rates, but we are still quite affordable for out-of-state students to come in and get an education cheaper than what they would get at home.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Mathis, let me ask you specifically. You've had a lot of experience with students that are not necessarily destined for success, should we put it that way, that are challenged a bit. What do you think the universities had a fair problem with retention from freshmen through the whole 4 years? What do you see as being the key in that area as you try to grow the university a bit?
Yeah, great question. Proper teachers, proper programs, and putting the students in the right program to begin with. And so many times students are trying to find themselves. So you hear that quite a bit going to a university or something. And so sometimes it's better to put them in lower level classes or something until they figure what direction they want to go to. But so again, I think the teachers make a huge impact and the programs on retention. So, and tuition, we charge a lot for tuition, and I think I have no problem raising tuition in most cases, because if they have something vested, parents, and especially the son or daughter, the student has something vested, they stay longer, because now it's a harder decision they've got an investment already, or a bigger investment. So.
Okay. Committee, I don't want to monopolize this. Let me turn to a slightly different question. Several of you have talked about going more research as a way to finance the university. It seems to me in all the years I've been here, there's been good support in the legislature for the university and for trying to have a first-rate university. I think that support is still there, but we're faced with very variable state revenues. And that does make it hard to maintain an even keel at an institution that's heavily dependent on the state. My sense is that we're getting to the point in the physical plant where we aren't going to need the kind of major investments we've been making recently. In the past, on occasion, in the good years, the state has put up matching money that could be then used to go out and raise endowments for various things, including endowed professor chairs, things like that. Is that a way to effectively use support that's available for the university when the times are good and the price of oil and gas is high, and that is something we can push when it's good and back off on when the economic times are tougher? Is that something we ought to go back to doing? Because we haven't been doing so much of that, except in some of the physical plant areas. Ms. Schmidt-Pizzato.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. So I happen to be the chairperson of the Budget Committee. And yes, I will just say overwhelmingly, yes, matching dollars are very, very important. We have extremely generous donors, as you all know. Our foundation funds are at some of the highest in the region. We have done extremely well. We have very large donors who want to give a large sum, but some of them purposely are waiting to see when that matches because they want to double their money or make it 1.5 times. We've had matching recently for ag that has been very successful. For the athletics, that has been successful. So there's lots of different opportunities, but many of our donors are savvy people and they want to see how they can stretch their money the best that they can. And if they can get some state dollars to match them, that's what they're going to go for. And so it's been an extremely successful program.
I got the feeling talking to your president that he felt constrained that the trustees didn't want him to go do that kind of thing, wanted to focus more on some of the specifics in the athletic and some of the other areas where you were building physical plant. Is that an accurate reading that, or am I missing something there? Dr. Fall.
Yeah, I don't know that that's 100% accurate. I think that our president is very aware of using money in the way I think it should be used. In fact, I've the last 3 years I've been able to be the ex officio member on the foundation board, which has been great. And this last year we've actually created, along with the president, the president went in and strategically looked at how the foundation, where is the money going, and set up several funds for deans to use for endowed chairs and to get top-notch professors as well as students. We were going to actually use some of the money to maybe even recruit some top-notch students from other states. And I think that the matching funds, I mean, that's the key. That's life and death for the foundation, to be totally honest with you. It's been great over the years, and I think it needs to continue. And I agree. I think hopefully our buildings outside of our dorms, which we need to construct, hopefully we're done building. I mean, the buildings that we've created the last few years, the science initiative, the engineer, are incredible buildings. And now we're getting the programmatic end of it really rolling and really going. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, these things are going to be great. So did I answer your question?
Yeah. In part, Senator Steinmetz, you had a question?
And also, I hate to say this, Mr. Chairman, but I'm going to have to get off here because I found out last week that we were doing this, and I'm actually still working, and I have patients scheduled for this morning, and there's no way I could reschedule them. So
Okay.
I have to apologize to the committee. There's nothing I can do. I'm gonna have to get off here in a few minutes, so I apologize.
And we understand this whole confirmation process, we don't have much time between when they let us know and when we have to vote, so.
Completely understand, and I really apologize. And last week we were closed because of the weather, and so we really couldn't come in and reschedule these patients, and so I'm kind of in a bind here. I really,
Okay, we, go ahead, feel free to leave if you want.
yeah, I got a few minutes yet, so I'll stay as long as I can, so.
Okay. Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for Ms. Schmidt-Pizzato, seeing that you're the chairman of the Budget Committee. I noticed that in the last year, we gave you $50 million for the West Side stands, for the law school, and for the pool, contemplating that maybe you would start on one and not all three at the same time. Could you please explain the rationale behind starting 3 projects at the same time when the full funding wasn't there, especially when the dorm projects were not completed and have fallen short?
Thank you, Senator Scott and Senator Steinmetz. I would love to pass this on to Kermit, who happens to be with the facilities committee. And so they are the ones that really address those kinds of issues more than my committee.
Okay, Kermit?
Well, thank you, Senator Scott and Senator Steinmetz. Those projects all kind of came on the board at the same time. Nothing's been contracted for except the parking garage. We did go forward with the parking garage, which I don't know if you remember far enough back, and Senator Geis was trying to build that parking garage many years ago, almost in the same place and the same structure that we're now building. So maybe, and I was sort of opposed to that. So I think maybe he knew more about the future than I did. But we did do the parking garage. We're primed with the dorms, with the West Side stands and the pool. I know the athletic department wanted to put the pool and the West Side stands together, and the outside support for swimming is it doesn't come to fruition very well. And I think that the thinking was if the pool were coupled with the West Side stands, and it would be a better fundraising opportunity and a better opportunity to get both done. And there's a real determination to have a swimming pool or a natatorium. And I looked natatorium up in the dictionary. I finally got tired of it. I looked it up, and natatorium means indoor swimming pool. So we can settle that once and for all. But there's not a lot of support, but we have to have a swimming program. And right now, Air Force was the first school that came in and refused to participate in a Mountain West meet in our pool because it wasn't to regulation. And so we're now having when we host Mountain West swimming meets, we do it in the high school pool. And so that's just sort of in Congress. That shouldn't happen. So they kind of piled up, but none of them are contracted except the parking garage. And then we ran into this inflation thing, and it sounds to me like the legislature is going to help us so that we can work our way out. So I think the West Side stands and the pool, the dorms all come together. The West Side stands and the pool have, especially the West Side stands, have a substantial private fundraising component that goes with them. Those 3, the dorms, the stands, the pool, the stands and the pool are kind of hooked together, but then they're sort of functioning independently. So we're getting the design drawings done. We have enough money to do that. We're getting the design drawings done. We don't like to go into these projects and dig ourselves the hole that we've been in with, for instance, with the pen sometimes in the past where we start too early. So we'd like to be way late in design drawings before we even go to contract, so that and by doing that, we cut down on these cost overruns and contingencies and all those sorts of things. And we had the money, so we're doing the design work. We're going to be shovel ready. And the hope is that we can get all those. And then I kind of agree with Ms. Schmidt-Pizzato. I think we're about done building things. This has been a constant. You know, when I went in the legislature, or since I went in the legislature in 2005, I haven't run the numbers lately, but including the gateway, I think we've spent in facilities on this campus about $1.25 billion since 2005. We have great facilities, and our facility, we have more capacity than we have students right now. And so I think we all see this building binge coming to an end. We've addressed about all of our needs. And this just comes down to the last one. I think with the money that, at least that was discussed, if that comes in, I think we can do them all and close it out. That's my real hope.
Okay. Let me ask just one factual question. What is the current size of the University of Wyoming endowment?
It's just below 800 million. It was over 800 million, but of course, everybody got killed this last year. So, and we didn't lose as much as our neighbors, to be honest with you. So it's just under 800 million.
Okay, so it's, in other words, it has essentially stalled out and we haven't been raising that much in the past few years. Is that a correct?
Oh, no, we get about, in the last several years, we've averaged about 50 million new dollars a year in support for the state of Wyoming. Is just incredible. The people in Wyoming are just incredible. So no, our goal is about 50 million a year, and I think we hit it. Well, I don't think we did last year, but this year we're going to hit that. So no, we get new money all the time. So
Of that 50 million, how much goes into current operations and how much goes into an endowment or a project sort of thing?
it all goes in the endowment mainly.
You know,
Although there are some private, like for the west side stands and things. I'm sorry, I don't know that breakdown, but most of it goes into the endowment.
okay.
Senator Scott, if I may, I need to correct one thing I said.
Go ahead.
I think the north dorm and the dining facility are under contract. The south dorm is not. The west stands are not, and the auditorium is not. So we have locked in a little bit more of that. But we only locked in what we thought we could cover because inflation is just eating us alive. And now if we get the relief that I'm hopeful the legislature is going to provide to us, well, then we can close the whole thing out. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Committee, any further questions, comments? Any of y'all want to add anything? Oh, Senator Steinmetz.
I just wanted to thank all of you for being willing to serve. I know it's a lot of work and we appreciate it.
Okay. I'm going to go briefly. Is there anybody here in the audience in the room that wants to add a comment or question? Seeing none, we won't have to do that. We're gonna, in a moment, we're gonna take a motion and vote. Anybody have any final words that they wanted to add to what's been said already? Kermit.
Senator Scott, I just had one more thought back to this business about a research university. You know, I was on one of the committees that worked on the Science Initiative building, and I thought it was fascinating. One of the themes that runs through the Science Initiative building is a lot of transparency and a lot of interdisciplinary thought. Academics have to, we're going to run it this way, and I've had my foot down, and so does the president. You got to compete to get in there in the first place, and you got to compete to stay in there. And if you're not producing in a meaningful way, then out you go. But beyond that, I was fascinated the way it's been designed so that undergraduates are in there. And the theory is with the glass walls, with the interaction between people, the hope was that the way that building is designed, it would get undergraduate students excited about research early in their time at UW. And there are many opportunities in there for undergraduates then to be involved. They're probably fairly menial tasks, but nonetheless to be involved in research. And so that I think it all goes toward the theme that you were talking about is how do we be a good teaching university and a good research university both, and how do we do that in such a way that students really get excited about research, and if that happens, I think it follows that they get excited about their studies, because that's the underpinning for the research that's going on. So I really think that there's been a lot of effort exactly along the lines that you brought up.
Is that the building where they put the offices in the core and the hallway essentially around the outside, so the profs couldn't get in and out of their offices without mingling with the students?
That's correct, Senator Scott. And I think I'm right on this. They did some of the same thing in the engineering building, but that is, nobody owns a window, nobody owns a corner, and nobody owns the space out or the views out of the building.
I thought somebody was thinking when they designed that. Because it did seem to force some interaction.
It does.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Committee, the motion is going to be that we recommend all four of these individuals for confirmation to the University Board of Trustees. Does anybody want to split anybody off and vote separately on them? Okay. Okay, the motion is we can recommend all four of them be confirmed. Any further discussion? Can you call the roll, please?
Senator Beitman? Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz?
Aye.
Chairman Scott?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, I don't anticipate any difficulties in the confirmation vote. I want to thank all four of you for participating in this. I hope you found it useful. I think we found it useful in trying to get a better understanding of the university. And the closing thought I would leave with you is that there is a lot of support here in the legislature for the university as our only four-year school, our flagship four-year institution. And I think that will continue, but you've got to manage the place properly to continue it, and that's your job. Okay, with that, meeting's closed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're adjourned. Committee, if you got just a few minutes.